Bob Dylan once wrote, "The times they are a changin'." And I don't think he was talking about networking, but he wasn't wrong. The way we set up our networks has changed drastically over the last decade. And one of the biggest game changers to come out is SD-WAN. So what exactly is SD-WAN? SD-WAN, or Software Defined Wide Area Network, is the latest and greatest in networking technology. And you've probably noticed over the last few years that you're hearing more and more about it. More vendors are taking notice of it or are even starting to push it out to you guys through their products. In fact, back in 2017, Cisco acquired Viptela for their SD-WAN capabilities, and just recently, HPE acquired Silver Peak. Not only that, but Gartner said that in 2020, businesses would be spending about $1.2 billion on SD-WAN technologies. So it is gaining quite a bit of popularity, and for good reason. But before we get into SD-WAN and how it works, let's first take a look at the history of networking for businesses that had a central location and multiple branch offices. You see, in the past, they would set up what's called an MPLS connection. With an MPLS connection, it allowed each of the branch offices to communicate back with the central office or with the data center where they hosted all their applications, maybe their email, maybe their ERP system, or maybe even custom apps that the business used. An MPLS connection also allowed the branch offices to communicate directly with each other, and this was done securely with a decent, fast connection. MPLS connections were great, and they did exactly what they needed to do in their time. But now, we're starting to see quite a shift in the way businesses operate online. Actually, in the last decade or so, we've seen a huge shift to cloud applications. So instead of having the locally hosted email, a business might rely on Microsoft for Office 365 or Google for Google Mail. Instead of having a locally hosted ERP or even CRM system, a company might utilize Salesforce in the cloud. And all these custom apps that they used to utilize on a local data center can now be hosted in a cloud data center using something like AWS or Azure. So with an MPLS connection, all of the devices and all of the branch offices are still having to communicate back to that central location in order to get out to the internet and to access these cloud locations. So that central data center that used to be the brains of the operation is now starting to become a bottleneck. So how do you resolve this issue without having to spend a ton of money to completely redo your network? That's where SD-WAN comes into place. SD-WAN, or Software Defined Wide Area Network, allows you to do quite a few things that you were not able to do utilizing an MPLS connection. First of all, it separates the management plane from the data plane. So this means that instead of having to go to each of your routers to manage individually to make any changes or add any applications or devices, you can do it through a central dashboard. SD-WAN also allows you to have a direct connection to all those cloud applications that you're utilizing. So instead of all the devices checking back into that central data center, they can now go directly from the internet to Office 365, to Salesforce, to AWS to access those cloud-hosted applications that used to be in the local data center. SD-WAN connections also allow you to determine which applications have priority over other applications. So for example, maybe you want to make sure that your VoIP phone system always has the best connection, but social networking doesn't really matter. So we can make sure that the VoIP system is at the top of the list, social networking is at the bottom, and that way you always have a reliable and fast connection whenever you're on the phone. Not only can you prioritize these applications, but also if you do have multiple connections, say you have a broadband and an LTE connection, and that broadband connection is starting to get bogged down, it can fall back to that LTE connection to once again make sure that your VoIP system has the best quality connection whenever you're on the phone. Now, all this might sound too good to be true, and yeah, it kind of is, but broadband connections are much cheaper than MPLS connections. And managing SD-WAN is much easier than managing MPLS. And I know a lot of you are probably saying, that sounds great, but we still have an MPLS system that we don't want to completely get rid of. And that's fine. You don't have to completely get rid of your MPLS system in order to use SD-WAN. You can do kind of a hybrid where the devices can still check back in to the locally hosted data center for maybe certain apps that you still have, custom apps, for example, but they can also communicate through the broadband connection out to the cloud hosted applications. In fact, if you do kind of a hybrid approach, typically businesses save about 50% of their networking cost using the hybrid approach as opposed to solely an MPLS. And then if you go 100% SD-WAN, your networking costs are about 25% of what they typically are using a full MPLS connection. If you'd like to know more about SD-WAN or whether or not it makes sense for your business, contact Corporate Armor today. Our security experts can help you out with any questions that you might have and find the solution that best fits your business.
If you like this video, you should check out some of our other Corporate Armor videos by clicking here and here, or here and here, or I really don't know where they're going to put the videos, but you're already here, so you might as well check them out.